Now, I would like to introduce our first keynote speaker, Professor T. Ye, to you. This is my great honor to introduce you. Professor T. Research focuses on climate and environmental policy and governance. He published extensively on climate change science and environmental policy. His books include on environmental governance in China and 6 volumes of annual review of low carbon development. Professor T taught environmental science, policy, and management at University of California, Berkeley from 1996 through year 2003. He received a PhD in environmental science in 1994 from State University of New York College of Environmental Science and Forestry and from Syracuse University, and conducted research at University of California, San Diego, and Cornell University. He studied agriculture, ecology, and economics from Hebei Agricultural University, the Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences, and the Chinese Academy of Sciences. So Professor T is multidisciplinary very much in himself, so it is a huge honor to have you to share with us your keynote speech today. Okay, thank you, Professor T.
Thank you, Professor Ma. Gosh, that's a very generous of you. Multidisciplinary. I told my colleagues yesterday I changed from a study on engineering and science and then to public policy 14 years ago, and did not realize social science is actually more difficult to study. Good morning, and thank you again, Professor Ma, for having me, and thank all our organizers today for putting together this timely discussion on energy transition. And this issue of energy transition is made even more pressing after the Paris conference in December 2015. I just remember in 2015, earlier that year, G7 had their meeting in Germany, and they concluded with one announcement, one declaration. They want to decarbonize the world economy by the end of the century, this century. Then I thought about it. Well, 85 years from what they said, it seems like a very long time. Then I calculated a little bit. Well, for the generations now, the younger faces now here, and your kids, your children actually can live to see that day. Then later, that year, 2015, and the world leaders get together. They want to even more ambitious target. Well, they say they want to achieve 2 degrees Celsius, and they want to try to achieve 1.5 degrees. What that means, right, that by the later half of this century, if we want to achieve 2 degrees, that means by 2080, we will end the fossil fuel use, right? If we truly want to achieve the 1.5 degrees target, that means we need to decarbonize the world economy by 2060. It's a very pressing target, right? So that is why energy transition is so important. But something we did not realize, that energy transition worldwide has already accelerated. And what I'm going to report to you this morning in the next 30 minutes, I'm just trying to present some of the recent studies my team, myself worked on. So I will first identify what I call the 7 megatrends in energy transition in China. Then I will talk a little bit about the drivers behind these transitions. And then finally, I'll try to get to the governance part to talk a little bit about the politics and policy for this energy transition. And I do understand some of this might be controversial. Well, that's what I really meant to be. So to generate some discussion later on, I very much look forward to that. Let me just read through the seven mega trends. Then I'll come back to each one of them with a little bit of explanation. The first one is this decelerated growth of energy consumption. We know for the last 30 years, the Chinese economy has been growing very fast. But after 2012, the economy grows much at a much slower pace. So is the energy, and which is very significant. Second, coal consumption has already peaked. It was peaked 2013. Third, energy intensity indicator to measure the energy efficiency is at all-time low, and much lower as compared to when the policy gets started. Four, the electrification now is not only a trend, it also has accelerated, and it also has become a national strategy. I will explain that. Natural gas, right? Even a couple of years ago, we don't really consider natural gas will play a major role in energy transition. But now, particularly starting this year, we do believe natural gas will be a mainstream energy. Six, the decarbonization of the entire energy system has accelerated. And with this, I do believe this is perhaps the most profound change in the entire energy system in China and maybe worldwide. And finally, carbon emissions, energy-related carbon emissions might have already peaked. Well, remember 2014 when the President of the United States, President of China got together in November, and they made a joint announcement. They want to, China declared that it will peak the carbon emission around 2030, all right, and try to make every effort to make an earlier peak around 2030. But the fact is, at the time when they signed that joint announcement, the Chinese emissions from the energy-related carbon emissions might have already peaked. I will explain why. Well, here we can see these three lines over here. The blue line, that's the GDP. Red line, overall energy, total energy consumption. And the green line, that's coal. And for a long time, the GDP growth depends very much on the total energy use, primarily, especially the total coal consumption. But since 2013, we begin to see the coal consumption began to decline. And for the first time, and we see a decoupling between the growth of the economy and the growth of coal consumption. The first time we see the coal-fired growth, economic growth, has ended. This is extremely significant. We're thinking about 2/3 of the economy. 2/3 of the energy comes from coal, right? Then we can give you a little bit more data on this. 2013 was a peak. By 2014, there was a 3% drop, very significant. 2015, a further 3.7% drop. And 2016, it was a 4.7% drop. Even a few years ago, when I was with Professor Baum in Sciences Po, and 2014, I remember we talked about this. We talked about when the coal would peak. And at that time, almost nobody was expecting the coal would peak anytime soon. In fact, the consensus was the Chinese coal consumption would not peak until after 2020, or even until after 2025, all right? Then we did some study on this last year. We published one paper on Nature Geoscience, and we basically declared 2013 was the year when coal peaked, and immediately we had the overwhelming response to that. I think now we have a new consensus. The new consensus is the coal consumption in China already peaked 2013. And so you see the share of coal consumption. Even at the time when 1990, more than more than three quarters of the energy consumption was from coal. And now last year, 2016, is a 22%. You can see this energy transition in China was using much less coal right now in both relative and absolute terms. And I want to show this figure in the UK. Some of you then studied this before. I want to show the time when when you see the dark green, that's consumption, and the real consumption peak, that's 1956. This was the year when the Clean Air Act was passed, right? Just only a couple of years after the 1952 the big London fog that killed a lot of people. So we have kind of similar trend after the 2013 the big smog in that year. Then we had a lot more stringent regulation on this. I put the figure here just to show the relationship between economic development and the per capita coal consumption. You can see the United States shown here in green, shown here in orange, and here is the United Kingdom. Here is China. They seems to be all following this kind of trend. This is probably easier to see. This was another paper put together a little earlier on Nature Geoscience. So they follow pretty much the similar trend. So you peak at a certain time, then later to decline. Third trend, the energy intensity. The Chinese policy on energy efficiency started in 1978. Next year, going to celebrate the 4 decades of that energy policy. Ever since then, we see almost a consistent decline of energy intensity over time at a rate almost 5% a year. All right? It's really hard to find any major economy have such a sharp decline. Of course, for a couple of years between 2002 and 2005, there is a reversal, but quickly after that, there is a decline. So if you compare the energy intensity in 1980 and to now, so you see now it's just about 1/4 of the energy intensity in the 1980. It is at all-time low. What this really helps the energy transition. I say the electrification is important because now this becomes a national strategy. First, to the electrification of the energy system, and then you can provide the power with the renewable sources, mainly hydro, the wind, and solar, and of course later we'll talk about nuclear. Nuclear is also going to be big, and we do call it a non-fossil fuel energy source. So electric vehicles now, China is just about one half of the world in total numbers. So this is a very, very significant trend. The natural gas, as I mentioned, was not considered to be a major fuel, was not expected to make a major fuel because of the endowment, the natural resource endowment for the natural gas. But now it becomes so important. both the demand and supply, the landscape of demand and supply has changed so much. For some major areas, like Beijing, Tianjin, and Hebei area, the conversion of coal to gas already happening. Every household, including the rural areas, now is going to burn natural gas for their primary source for cooking and for heating. Right? Every family, every household, right, with very heavy government subsidies. And for the supply side, we know, and just recently there is a discussion, there is an agreement between U.S. and China to import natural gas, LNG, from the United States to China. And this, the supply has, there are multiple sources, and the price now is really good. The price is expected to be low, or to be a good price for a long time. Already see natural gas is used for cars, for many other sources. So for the accelerated decarbonization, we developed an indicator. We call it a decarbonization index, DCI. And I want to show you this. So this index works like this. If the overall energy system is all coal, consists of coal, and that means the indicator will be 0. All right. If it's all non-carbon, all non-fossil fuel, that will be 1. So it's a 0 to 1. We can see at the first period, the period of the first industrial revolution, and that's all of these countries, they all depend on coal. And by the time the first oil well was developed in the United States in 1859, we begin to see the decarbonization index in the United States begin to pick up and grow very, very quickly. And while the United Kingdom continue to remain very low because of their heavy dependence on coal. And then after the World War II, United Kingdom and other countries here in China began to pick up and grow very fast. By the time around the turn of the century, and the United Kingdom already caught up with the United States already, and even exceeded at some points, and then later began to accelerate it. See, this time around 2010, we see acceleration of this the decarbonization index. I want to point out two things. The one thing is the acceleration, right? I will show you later on. Almost all the major economies, they have this acceleration of the decarbonization. And the second point I want to point out, I don't know whether or not this is coincidence or not. This is the second period. Well, this is a time when the United States overtook the United Kingdom to become the top economic power. Well, this is also the time when we see the divergence between the two countries in terms of decarbonization index, right? Then this is, for all other countries, very interestingly, we see acceleration of this. This is when we say the new industrial revolution, or the new energy revolution gets started. And this is for the world picture. You put all the countries together, you see this acceleration at this time. We see this is very, very significant, or this might just mark the beginning of the new industrial revolution. Finally, we believe the carbon emission might have already peaked. There are a lot of studies. They're all based on scenarios. And we thought these scenarios is really a bad idea because we don't really know much about the future economic development. Because these changes, as Philip pointed out yesterday in the conversation, all of these changes have a lot to do with economic growth. We do not really know the future economic growth. What we do know is the consensus about the energy use in future. We use a very, very high number, 6 billion tons for 2030, and we realize that if we just consider the only one index, which is the carbon intensity of the per unit of energy use, right? If that one is below 1.89, then we'll easily get a flat trend for carbon emission. So that means 2014 might be already the peak. But the thing is that 6 billion tons is overestimate, right? Is overestimate. Now the consensus is more like no more than 5.5. So if that is the case, we don't have to. We do not have to make it 1.89 if we can make sure the carbon emission per unit of energy that will decrease at a rate of 1.45%. Then that we can have a flat trend for the carbon emission. So this is an extremely simple approach, and it's a lot more reliable. I understand I only have like 2 minutes left. Let me just quickly show you what I think about these drivers. As I mentioned, yes, indeed, the first driver is the economic growth, but that's not enough to explain all these mega trends. I think the structural change of the economy is also very, very important. Now we have a lot more service industry, the tertiary industry, which consumes less energy, produce more GDPs. And the sharp decline of the cost of renewable energy. And finally, the green investment and finance. Let me just give me one more minute. Let me just quickly show you. All right, the economic. Let me just show you the cost. This is why it's so interesting. This was a figure from the World Bank, 2009, and back then they were talking about the price of the photovoltaic, right, solar PVs. 1979, $25, and 2001, $3.6. What is it now? Now it is below 30 cents, right, per watt. And this month, for the cells, they're all below 20. Well, they're all 21, 20, 23 cents per watt. And this is wind. And we see this exponential decline in terms of the price. And for investment, and we know China started the investment, this idea of green investment in 2009 in response to the financial crisis. And China was the biggest in terms of the absolute and the relative amount of money put in the green investment. Ever since 2009, China became the number one investor in renewable energy. By now, nowadays, China invests like more than 1/3 of the world investment in renewable energy and wind and solar, and so very, very big thing. Final thing. All right, what I think about the policy and politics about this energy transition. Well, this idea of often puzzling to many, ecological civilization, right? But we in mainland China, we believe this is what is happening, okay? And the environmental issues now has become a political issue, right? Because it used to be a public health issue, used to be a social issue, but now it is taken as one major threat to the political legitimacy for the administration. So it's a political issue. Third, the energy production and consumption revolution. When you guys were talking about the energy transition, we're talking about the energy revolution, right? We love revolutions, right? Then we really think it's really happening. And finally, and China now is almost ready to take a leadership in a lot of global issues. So China wants to be not only a participant, but also a builder and a contributor to the global governance. when it comes to issues like climate change, like environment, and do we want to play a bigger role? Well, that is what is behind all these changes. So the overall thinking is changing, is driving the overall governance and then the consequences of that. Thank you very much. I look forward to the discussion. Thanks.
Thanks, Professor Qi. Yeah. Thanks, Professor Qi, for giving us a very wonderful and inspiring keynote speech. We are very well on time, so we do have a couple of minutes to take comments and questions from the audience. Please indicate your names and affiliation, please. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Professor Qi, for your interesting talk. I'm Julie from City University, PhD student. Regarding policy of energy transition in China, we see a lot of top-to-bottom initiative, mainly driven by the government. What is the civil society and people thinking about this transition? Is there any bottom-up initiatives regarding policy in energy transition?
Well, as you know, so should I answer? As you know, we are very good at top-down things, right? So as you're absolutely right. So far, we mainly depend on the top-down measures. Yes, there are some bottom-up measures, not policy, but a lot of very interesting practices. Let me just give you one example related to carbon market in the province of Hubei province, and they developed something for reducing carbon emission and energy saving. So they encourage the citizens to take steps to reduce their carbon footprint, and then they can earn something like a carbon money, a carbon dollars. All right, then you can earn the credit, then you can actually sell that to a company, and that company they just give you real cash. All right, then that company can actually sell the bundled carbon credit on the carbon market. I mean, there are things like these local initiatives, not to mention a lot of citizen initiatives and community initiatives. That's something we really need more to do, but really not enough, right?
But this is still an initiative from the local government.
From the local, no, not from the local government, from the citizens, right?
Thank you, Professor Qi. I'm Guo Meiyu from Hong Kong Baptist University. So my question is, how do you think that the One Belt, One Road strategy might affect the China's energy consumption or the energy mix? Because we're going to have a lot of energy collaboration along the Belt and Road.
Well, that's a very big question, but it's a great question. First of all, I have to acknowledge I'm still in the learning process about One Belt, One Road. But I would suspect that if at a larger scale, a lot of the production is made in China, that will probably increase the energy consumption inside China. But I hope that's not the case, because this might be considered to be a Chinese initiative, but it is a joint effort, of many countries along the One Belt, One Road. And also, I have heard and I have seen, talking to many people, that they want to make this initiative a green initiative. That means, starting from the very beginning, you don't really copy the Chinese model, which worked in the last 3 decades. You don't copy that model to other countries, along the One Belt, One Road. So just taking advantage of this major energy transition, and just to make it what is working now, wind, solar, non-fossil fuel, to make that to apply them to other countries, or to other places. So I hope that is the case, and also the green finance for the One Belt One Road. It just got started, and I do see this is a very important issue, and I hope we can avoid some of the problems we had in the past and just make a green One Belt One Road. All right. Thank you.
So thank you very much for your attractive and productive lecture. So I'm Akisa Mori from Kyoto University, Japan. I saw in your presentation you talked about the winners of energy transition, such as natural gas and renewable energy. But so there should be a loser, so coal power and coal industry. Because the consumption of coal is declining. So I'd like to ask you, so how to manage or treat the declining coal industry and coal power?
Well, that's a big challenge to the government. And actually, I myself as a scholar, I can care less. But that's a major social issue. Already we have seen in some places we see some problems with that. I think right now, the government is trying to do training of these coal mine workers and helping the coal mines, coal industry to make their transition to other activities, other industries. I don't really see this process can take a long time. All right. Right now, right at the moment, and they're doing pretty well. As you know, this year, and the price of coal actually climbed up. But I do think that's I don't really see the government now has all the solutions to that issue right now. But I think this pain, this kind of pain, will happen, and but I think people are actually prepared, mentally prepared for that. You have to go through this period. For this transition. I think that's just happening for any other kind of transition as well, right?
Yeah, thank you very much, Didier Keshmer from Paris. Thank you. The talk you gave is breaking some cliches somewhere about the coal and China. So thank you for that. A word was not in your talk. It's digital. Do you think that there is a relation or something that could explain this transition and which is related to the development of numeric digital technologies? Could have all this transition be so efficient without?
Thank you. That's a wonderful question. Yes, I do think that the digital revolution is part of this. I actually had some more slides over there. For instance, when I talk about the structural change of the economy, and that involves mainly from the very rapid increase of the service sector. The service sector, including all these industries involved in the digital technology, digital shopping, all the logistics, all this Alibaba, all this kind of thing, they're contributed in a very significant way to the increase of the share of the service industry. Yes, the energy sector itself is considering just making use of digital technology, but I don't think that is really contributing in a major way right now. But looking to the future, when people are talking about Internet of Things, when people using this what we call the global energy internet connection, I think that will probably even bigger role. But right now, I think that the main contribution is really from the sector in the service industry utilizing the digital technology.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Professor Qi, once again for giving us the keynote speech, and thanks the audience for all the questions and the feedback from Professor Qi.
Thank you.